Hello and welcome to Mo HealthNet Medicaid Boot Camp for benefit planners who are assisting people with disabilities seeking employment. I am Anna Witherby, a program specialist with the Department of Mental Health, and with me is Charles Bentley, the Medicaid consultant for the Missouri Department of Mental Health. The learning objectives for today are to 1. Describe the structure of the Mo HealthNet Medicaid program. 2. List common ways for Missourians with disabilities or who are blind to get Mo HealthNet. 3. To explain eligibility criteria for each of these Mo HealthNet categories. And 4. To identify which Mo HealthNet categories people are eligible for through case examples.
The name of Missouri's Medicaid program is Mo HealthNet. Mo HealthNet also includes the Children's Health Insurance Program, known as CHIP, and some state-only funded medical assistance categories. Mo HealthNet provides comprehensive health coverage to certain groups of people with low incomes. It is jointly funded by the federal government and the state. For the state, the Missouri Department of Social Services is the designated single-state Medicaid agency. To be eligible for Medicaid, a person must be a member of certain large groups of people, such as children, pregnant women, people who are disabled or meet the definition of blindness, low-income parents, or at least age 65, and fit into the eligibility criteria for a specific category, such as Mo HealthNet for the disabled. The federal government sets certain Medicaid rules, including but not limited to which groups are mandatory and which groups are optional. Also, which services are mandatory and which services are optional. Within the rules, the state has flexibility to customize their Medicaid program, including choosing which optional categories of people to cover. Missouri has chosen to include coverage of a Medicaid buy-in category for workers with disability and to use higher income limits and asset limits for people with that SSI uses for the aged, blind, and disabled populations. Missouri has also opted to cover some services with Medicaid that other insurance rarely covers, such as home and community-based waiver services and community psychiatric rehabilitation services. Mo HealthNet coverage includes primary and acute preventive care, hospital care, prescription drug coverage, home health care, for certain groups, dental coverage, vision coverage, hearing aids, community psychiatric rehabilitation services, comprehensive substance treatment and rehabilitation, C-STAR services, home and community-based waiver services, non-emergency medical transportation, transplant services. Some of these services that have the asterisk are limited to people who are not over the age of 21 unless they're receiving based on pregnancy, blindness, or in a Medicaid institution. To apply for Mo HealthNet, a person can apply at a local family support division office. You can find this link gives you where you can find the addresses of local offices. You can also contact Family Support Division to apply by phone at 1-855-373-4636. You can also apply online or print an application by going to mydss.mo.gov. The key categories for people with disabilities who are applying for Medicaid or might need Medicaid are the Mo HealthNet for the aged, blind, and disabled, non-spend-down or spend-down coverage. This category includes people that are receiving SSI, the Ticket to Work Health Assurance Program, which is Missouri's Medicaid buy-in program for people with disabilities, coverage under Section 1619B of the Social Security Act, supplemental nursing care, supplemental aid to the blind, blind pension. Blind pension, unlike the other five, only provides Mo HealthNet that it's a state-funded Mo HealthNet category, which covers most services covered by Medicaid, but not all. Mo HealthNet for the age blind and disabled is the primary category that most people with disabilities receive Medicaid under. It is for people that are disabled, are blind, or are at least age 65 and meet the other eligibility requirements for Medicaid. To qualify, a person who is under the age of 65 must meet Social Security's definition of disability or meet Missouri Medicaid's definition of blindness. To see these actual eligibility requirements, you can go to the various links here on the slide that takes you to Department of Social Services pages that show the eligibility requirements for each of those categories. The asset limit for the MHABD program category, the available resources cannot exceed $4,000 for a single individual, $8,000 for a married couple. The rules on considering assets are similar to the SSI rules. If you want to see specifics, you can look in the DSS manuals from sections 1025 to 1035. This gives you the link where you can find those. It's in the Medicaid, the FSD manual for the December 1973 eligibility requirements. The countable income for Mo HealthNet for the age blind and disabled. Countable income rules are, again, similar to SSI. The following deductions are allowed from income. First, the first $65 of earned income is disregarded. Then 1/2 of all remaining earned income. There's a $20 personal income exemption that's allowed. All SSI income is disregarded. Health insurance premiums are a deduction. Also, work-related expenses paid by a blind worker can be deducted. And education expenses paid by a student who is under the age of 22 and employed. In doing the budget, it counts both the income. It only considers the income of the person applying and their spouse when they are living together. The income limits for Mo HealthNet for the aged, blind, and disabled. For non-spend-down coverage, for the aged and disabled, the countable income must be at or below 85% of the federal poverty level. That's $885 for a single individual, $1,198 for a married couple. For the blind, the countable income must be at or below 100% of the federal poverty level, which is currently $1,041 a month for a single individual, $1,409 for a married couple. These income limits change each April 1st because they're based on the federal poverty levels. When countable income exceeds those income limits, the person is still eligible for Mo HealthNet as a spend down. There's no actual income limit for spend down. Spend down is the amount that the countable income exceeds the non-spend down limit. The spend down can be met by making a monthly payment to the Department of Social Services Mo HealthNet Division or submitting verification of incurred medical expenses to the Department of Social Services Family Support Division. Each month, the Mo HealthNet Division sends the consumer an invoice giving them the choice for the next month. The spend down is not a premium. It does not have to be paid each month. Even if the consumer cannot normally meet their spend down, it's sometimes to their advantage to keep their case open so that in the event that they do have unexpected medical expenses, they can get Medicaid coverage. Coverage can be activated retroactively on spend down cases for up to 12 months prior to the month that they provide verification of their medical expenses. To meet spend down, there's the two ways you can meet spend down. You can either meet spend down by submitting a payment to the Mo HealthNet division. If you do that, the client pays the spend down. They get their invoice each month. They send in their payment to the Mo HealthNet division, and then their coverage begins on the first day of the month. The invoice that they receive contains the instructions on how to make the payment. They have to submit it by either a check, a money order, or a cashier's check, and it gives them the address where to submit the payment. Once the client first starts paying in their spend down, they are then given the option on their next invoice to set up auto payments where the payment can be directly withdrawn from their bank account. This would happen on the 10th day of each month for the next month's spend down. If a client pays in their, again, this is where this is different. This works like a premium, but it's different. If a client pays in their monthly spend down, but they don't actually receive services equal to the amount that they paid in, the difference will be refunded to the client after 12 months. The 12-month waiting period is because providers have up to 12 months to submit their claims to Mo HealthNet. If a consumer chooses to meet their spend down with incurred medical expenses, they must send documentation to the Family Support Division. Allowable medical expenses are those for which the client is personally responsible for or are the responsibility of a state program, such as community psychiatric rehabilitation services and C-STAR services that are subject to payment by the Department of Mental Health. Coverage, when you're trying to meet spend down with incurred medical expenses, coverage begins on the day that the amount of the incurred expenses reaches the spend down amount. For the day the spend down is met with incurred expenses, Mo HealthNet only pays the portion of the services that are above the spend down amount. SSI recipients, people who receive SSI, should almost always be eligible for Mo HealthNet non-spend down coverage. The reason for this is that the SSI countable monthly income limit is less than the Mo HealthNet non-spend down limit. Currently, the SSI maximum payment is $771, which is less than 85% of poverty. The SSI countable resource limit also is lower than the Mo HealthNet limit. SSI has a limit of $2,000 for an individual, $3,000 for a married couple. Current Mo HealthNet limit is $4,000 and $8,000.
Here's an example of Mo HealthNet with a spend down. George receives $1,050 per month in SSDI. He has Medicare and is not married. He has $80 in his bank account and no other assets. His Medicare premium is paid by the QMB program. He receives medical services totaling $1,200 per month that Medicare does not cover, but Medicaid does. George will qualify for Medicaid with a spend down of $145 per month. His Medicaid coverage will begin on the date of the month his incurred medical expenses reach $145 for the first day of the month if he chooses to pay the spend down amount to Mo HealthNet division. If George started earning income through employment, he would likely have an option to get Medicaid through the Ticket to Work category, which with premiums lower than the monthly spend down amount. And here is an example for Mo HealthNet with SSI. Samantha is earning $771 per month in SSI. She starts a job that pays her $1,085 per month in gross wages. Her countable income for SSI is $500 per month. This reduces her SSI to $271 per month. She would remain eligible for Mo HealthNet with a non-spend down. Her countable income for Medicaid is $490, which is below the non-spend down limit.
The next category we want to talk about is the Ticket to Work health assurance category which provides Medicaid coverage to persons with disabilities who are age 16 through age 64 who are employed. The income of both the disabled individual and their spouse are included in determining eligibility for the TWHA category. DMH has developed a calculator which can be used to determine the different earned income amounts, how they would impact the consumer's eligibility for the Ticket to Work Medicaid category, or if they're not eligible for Ticket to Work Medicaid, how much their spend down would change based on their employment. The Ticket to Work category is split into two groups, both of which provide full Medicaid benefits. First, there's a basic coverage group. This is for individuals who meet Social Security's definition of disability, except that they may earn over the substantial gainful activity limit, and they must either currently be receiving payment. To determine their disability, then, if they're currently receiving Social Security disability benefits or SSI payments, they're considered disabled. If they're not receiving those benefits, their disability has to be determined by the Family Support Division's Medical Review Team, MRT. Again, MRT looks at the eligibility to determine disability just like they would for a person who is not employed, except they do not look at the SGA limit. The medically improved group is the second group under Ticket to Work. It's for individuals who first were receiving coverage in the basic coverage group, but have a medical improvement, but they still have a severe disability which is determined by MRT. For example, this might be a person who has a bipolar disorder, and when they first were determined eligible for Medicaid, it met their condition met Social Security's definition of disability, but through treatment and medications, they've improved that if they were now applying for Social Security or Medicaid, they would not meet the medical disability criteria. However, since they're employed and they still have their underlying condition, they still have a bipolar condition that they're receiving treatment for, they can continue their Medicaid in the medically improved group. The eligibility requirements for the Ticket to Work health insurance category are that the person has to be between the ages of 16 and 64. They have to be employed, paying both Social Security taxes and Medicare taxes. For the basic coverage group, though, there's no minimum earnings that are required to be eligible in the Ticket to Work health insurance category. For the medically improved group, they must be employed earning at least the equivalent of 40 hours a month at the federal minimum wage. Currently, that'd be about $290 per month. They cannot have gross income. The Ticket to Work category has both a gross income limit and a net income limit. Their gross income has to be below the current income limit, then the net income also has to be below the income limit. They also have to have available resources that do not exceed the Mo HealthNet for the age blind and disabled limit, the $4,000 and $8,000 for a married couple. The current income limits for the TWHA category are the gross income limit is 300% of the federal poverty level, which currently is $3,123 per month for a single individual, $4,228 per month for a married couple. The net income limit is the same as the non-spend down income limit for the Mo HealthNet for the age blind and disabled, 85% of the federal poverty level. Currently, that's $885 per month for a single individual, $1,198 per month for a married couple. To determine net income on the Ticket to Work program, the following deductions are allowed. First, in the net income determination, all the earned income of the disabled worker is disregarded. Then, They get a standard deduction for impairment-related employment expenses, which is equal to 1/2 of the disabled worker's earned income. So even though their earned income doesn't count, they get a deduction based on the amount of earned income that they have that comes off of their other income. Also, the first $50 of the disabled worker's SSDI is disregarded. They receive a $20 personal income exemption. All SSI payments are disregarded. They receive a $75 standard deduction for optical and dental insurance that costs less than $75 per month. All other health insurance premiums are disregarded. Also, if they have a spouse in the home who is not a person who is not disabled, the first $65 of the non-disabled spouse's earnings are disregarded, plus 1/2 of the non-disabled spouse's remaining earned income. The Ticket to Work Health Assurance Program may require a premium to be paid before coverage begins. There's a monthly premium is required if the gross income is above 100% of federal poverty level. Currently, that's $1,041 for a single individual, $1,409 for married couples. The premiums range from $42 to $156 for single individuals, $56 to $211 per month for married couples. For the actual amounts, you can refer to the Family Support Division's Appendix J of their Income Maintenance Manual. The link is on this slide here. You can also use the TWHA calculator that the Department of Mental Health has developed to plug in their income numbers and see would they be eligible under TWHA and how much their premium amount would be.
Okay, here is an example of a client receiving Ticket to Work. Stephanie receives $1,270.50 per month in SSDI. She has Medicare and pays Medicare Part B premium in the amount of $135.50 per month. She's 52 years old and unmarried. Her Medicaid is Mo HealthNet for the aged, blind, and disabled with a $230 spend down. She begins a job that pays her $1,170 per month in gross wages. Her Ticket to Work health assurance net income is $480 per month. She has $3,500 in her bank account and no other assets, so she is eligible for Ticket to Work with a monthly premium of $104.
The next category we want to cover is Medicaid under Section 1619B of the Social Security Act. This is a Medicaid category for people with disabilities who become ineligible for SSI payments due to earned income. The individual to qualify in this category, the individual has to first have been determined by the Social Security Administration to be eligible for Section 1619B status, and the person has to have received Medicaid in the month before the approval for 1619B status by Social Security. There is no spend down or premium for this type of coverage. The requirements for Social Security to place a person in 1619B status are: the person must be determined by Social Security Administration to need Medicaid, meaning that they have used it in the past 12 months or they expect to use it in the next 12 months or would need it in an emergency. And they must also be determined by Social Security to be not medically improved, meaning that their medical condition still meets Social Security or SSI's definition of disability or blindness, except that they may now be working above the SGA limit, which does not apply to 1619B status. Countable resources must still be below the SSI limits of $2,000 for an individual, $3,000 for a married couple. Countable unearned income also must be below SSI's limit of $771 per month. There is an earnings threshold to be eligible for 1619B status. That currently for Missouri is $37,692 per year. However, Social Security can determine a higher individual threshold for a person based if they have higher than average Medicaid costs, or they get publicly funded attendant care, or they have a past expenses, IRWE expenses. So Social Security can provide a higher threshold. So in determining Medicaid eligibility, all the Family Support Division looks at is, has Social Security determined the person is in 1619B status? Family Support Division, in determining the Medicaid eligibility, doesn't look at what the actual income is.
Here's an example of a client receiving 1619B Medicaid. Jamal is receiving $620 per month SSDI and $171 per month SSI. He starts a job that pays $665 per month in gross wages. His countable income is $900 per month. His SSI is reduced to $0 by his earnings. His earnings are well below the 1619B threshold of $37,692 per year as of 2019. He uses Medicaid regularly and is not medically improved. He has $400 in total resources, and he is eligible for the 1619B Medicaid category.
The next Medicaid category that we want to go over is the Supplemental Nursing Care category. Supplemental Nursing Care, or SNC, is actually a cash grant program for people who are age 65 or over, disabled, or blind, who are living in a residential care facility, an assisted living facility, or a non-Medicaid vendor skilled nursing or intermediate care facility. SNC cover, if a person is eligible for the SNC cash grant, they're automatically eligible for Medicaid. To be eligible for supplemental nursing care, a person must be age 21 or over and living in a licensed facility of one of those three types, RCF, assisted living facility, or non-Medicaid vendor facility. They must also meet the all other eligibility requirements for the Mo HealthNet for the age blind and disabled, including the assets, and have countable income that is less than the facility's base rate. The income determination for supplemental nursing care, you can find that in the DSS manual in section 610.010.00 of the DSS income maintenance manuals. The income that's excluded, the only income that's excluded are sheltered workshop earnings, income from sub-minimum wage employment in an institution, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation payments for training or school, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act program payments. There is also a disregard for supported employment earnings, which is equal to the first $65 a month of supported employment earnings and 1/2 the remaining supported employment earnings. The supplemental nursing care cash benefits, the maximum monthly payments for SNC for a person living in a residential care facility is $156 per month. For a person living in an assisted living facility, it's $292 a month. And for a person living in a non-Medicaid vendor nursing facility, the maximum payment is $390 per month. In order to receive the $390 grant, the person must be certified by the Department of Health and Senior Services as medically needing either an intermediate or skilled nursing facility level of care. People eligible for the Supplemental Nursing Care Cash Grant also receive a personal needs allowance payment of $50 per month from the Family Support Division unless they are placed in the facility through the Department of Mental Health's Supported Community Living Program. If they're in the DMH SCL program, they receive their personal needs allowance from the Supported Community Living Program.
And here's an example of a client in the SNC program. Stephanie, and this is a different Stephanie than the last Stephanie, is 37 years old and lives in a residential care facility. She's not a DMH-supported community living placement. She receives $980 per month in SSDI. She has $1,100 in a bank account with no other resources. The basic residential care facility charge is $2,000 per month. Stephanie is eligible for an SNC cash grant of $156 per month. She will also receive $50 per month in a personal needs allowance payment. She will receive Medicaid with no spend down.
Supplemental Aid to the Blind is a cash assistance program for blind people. In addition to the cash grant, it also provides automatic Medicaid eligibility without a spend down or premium. To be eligible for Supplemental Aid to the Blind, a person must meet Missouri Medicaid's state definition of blindness, which is vision with correction that is less than 5/200, which is the equivalent of 2,800, or they have a visual field of 5 degrees or less. The person also must be age 18 or over. They must have assets below the program's limits. They must not have a parent or sighted spouse in Missouri who can provide adequate financial support. They must apply for or receive Supplemental Security Income, SSI. They must not be publicly soliciting alms, and they must have countable income that does not exceed Missouri's consolidated standard of $833 per month. The Supplemental Aid to the Blind asset limit is a limit of countable real and personal property which cannot exceed $4,000 for a single individual, $8,000 for a married couple. These amounts are the same as for the Mo HealthNet for the age blind and disabled category. There's slight difference in what is considered real and personal property versus what is considered available resources under the age blind and disabled program. The rules are similar, again, though, to SSI's rules for assets and can be found in the DSS manual sections 1025 to 1035. The SAB program's income determination, the countable income rules, again, are similar to SSI. It counts only the income of the applicant. SSI is excluded in determining countable income to compare to the consolidated standard. The deductions that are allowed from earned income are the first $85 of earned income, 1/2 of any remaining earned income, federal and state income taxes that the person pays, Social Security tax that they pay, and a standard expense for employment, which is 10% of their gross earned income, or if they have actual expenses that exceed 10%, that can be allowed. For people with income up to $1,200 per month, the Family Support Division does have a standard earned income exemption table that is built into their computer system that will calculate these expenses. For higher income limits, the Family Support Division worker has to manually calculate the amount to allow and enter that into their system. So if a person has income under the consolidated standard of $833 per month and meets all the other eligibility requirements for the Supplemental Aid to the Blind program, their Supplemental Aid to the Blind cash grant will be determined by subtracting any SSI payment that the person receives from the maximum SAB grant of $750 per month.
And here's an example of a client receiving supplemental aid to the blind. Max's vision is less than 5/200 in both eyes. He is 43 years old. He earns average gross wages of $1,300 per month and receives SSI of $388 per month on average. He has $144 per month withheld from his pay for taxes. His work-related expenses are less than the 10% standard. His countable income of $333.50 is less than the consolidated standard of $833. He has $600 in his bank account with no other assets. He does not have a sighted spouse or parent who can support him. He does not solicit alms. He would be eligible for an SAB grant of $362 per month.
Blind pension is also a cash grant program of the state, which is for blind people who are ineligible for SSI and ineligible for the Supplemental Aid to the Blind program for reasons other than age or vision. All people eligible for blind pension receive a cash grant of $750 per month, regardless of the amount of other income they have. The blind pension program also provides automatic eligibility for state-only funded Mo HealthNet, which covers all services covered by Missouri Medicaid for adults, except Section 1915C, home and community-based waivers, including those waivers that by the Department of Mental Health's Division of Developmental Disabilities. Also does not cover community psychiatric rehabilitation services, C-STAR services, comprehensive substance treatment and rehabilitation, does not cover transplant services, and does not cover non-emergency medical transportation services. To be eligible for blind pension, the person again must be age 18 or over and meet the state's definition of blindness, which is vision with best correction that is less than 5/200, or they meet the visual field requirement. They must also be determined ineligible for SSI. They must be ineligible for supplemental aid to the blind for a reason other than age or vision. They cannot be receiving other cash assistance such as supplemental nursing care, temporary assistance for needy families, the TANF program, and they cannot be receiving vendor Medicaid coverage in an institution. They cannot have a sighted spouse in the home who can provide adequate financial support, which is defined now in state law as having income of at least 500% of federal poverty level for the couple, which currently is $97,300 per year. The person cannot have refused to work or accept vocational rehabilitation services if the person is physically and mentally capable and between the ages of 18 and 50. They cannot have total property that exceeds $30,000 per month. They cannot own total property that exceeds $30,000. Total property excludes the home in which the person lives and the first $100,000 in an ABLE account.
Here's an example of a client receiving blind pension. Adelina's vision is less than 5/200 in both eyes, and she is 31 years old. She meets the state definition of blindness. She lives in the community and is not married. She receives $900 per month in SSDI and is therefore ineligible for SSI and SAB. She has a bank account with $50 and no other assets. She is eligible for a blind pension cash grant of $750 per month and state-only funded Mo HealthNet coverage.
Okay, in conclusion, many people with disabilities depend on Medicaid because of the services it covers. People with disabilities can qualify for Medicaid in a variety of ways, as we've just talked about, including if a person loses eligibility for Medicaid in one category, there's often another category that they might qualify for. When a person has an open Medicaid case, when a change in their situation occurs, they report that change to the Family Support Division, and then the Family Support Division worker will look at how their situation has changed and explore those other options before they actually close the Medicaid. Because Medicaid is so important to people with disabilities, benefit planners need to be familiar with the different Medicaid categories and help people determine if a work goal or other change in circumstances might stop or change their Medicaid eligibility or create eligibility in another category, such as Ticket to Work health assurance. They need to also be able to estimate when that eligibility might change for Medicaid and figure out which categories the person might qualify for and which option is the best for the person. Benefit planners should also be able to help people plan for transitions in their Medicaid eligibility and help them understand how the change in their employment or other circumstances might cause them to switch from one Medicaid to a group to another. If you have questions about the things we've covered so far, you can contact the Department of Mental Health's Medicaid unit at the email dmh.medicaideligibility@dmhmo.gov. Now Anna is going to go over 4 individual case studies with you about the effects of changes in people that had in different circumstances, how employment would affect their ongoing Medicaid eligibility.
Okay, so our first case study is of Paulette, and Paulette is 23 years old. She receives $1,120 per month in SSDI. She's not blind and has under $2,000 in her bank account. She's not married. She is in the 2-year waiting period for Medicare, and she needs Medicaid to receive treatment and support services related to her disability. She is eligible for Mo HealthNet for the aged, blind, and disabled spend-down coverage. As she meets Social Security's definition of disability, she receives SSDI and has available resources of under $4,000. She will have to meet a spend-down of $215 per month before her coverage will begin for the month. Paulette finds a job. She begins working 6 hours per week and earns $10 per hour. Her average gross wages are $260 per month. She still receives $1,120 per month in SSDI, and her situation is otherwise the same. Paulette is now eligible for Mo HealthNet for the aged, blind, and disabled spend-down coverage as she meets Social Security's disabilities definition of disability. She receives SSDI. She has available resources of under $4,000, and she is not eligible for Ticket to Work health assurance. She will now have to meet a spend-down of $312 per month before her coverage will begin for the month. Paulette gets an increase in her work hours. She now works 10 hours per week and earns $10 per hour. Her average gross wages are now $433 per month. She still receives $1,120 per month in SSDI, and her situation is otherwise the same. Paulette is now eligible for Ticket to Work health assurance. As she meets Social Security definition of disability, she still receives SSDI, meets gross and net income limits, has available resources of under $4,000. She will have a $42 per month Ticket to Work health insurance premium, which is less than the amount her spend down would have increased to if she chose it rather than Ticket to Work health insurance. Paulette gets another increase in work hours. She now works 28 hours per week and earns $10 per hour. Her average gross wages are $1,213 per month. She still receives the $1,120 per month SSDI, and her situation is otherwise the same. Paulette is still eligible for Ticket to Work health insurance as she meets Social Security's definition of disability. She receives SSDI, meets gross income and net income limits, has available resources of under $4,000. Her Ticket to Work premium will increase to $104 per month, which is less than the amount her spend down would have increased to, which was $789 if she chose it rather than Ticket to Work health insurance. Our next case study is for Clarence. Clarence is 21 years old. He is not married and pays for his own food and shelter costs. He receives $771 per month in SSI. He has $30 in his bank account. He's not a student now, but he recently graduated from college. He sees a psychiatrist and a therapist and takes medication. Clarence is eligible for Mo HealthNet for the aged, blind, and disabled non-spend-down coverage as he receives SSI and so meets the following eligibility requirements. He meets Social Security's definition of disability, meets the non-spend-down limit of $885, which is higher than SSI limit of $771, and has available resources under the SSI limit of $2,000, which is less than the MHABD limit of $4,000. Clarence finds a full-time job. He starts working 40 hours per week and earns $18 per hour. His SSI payments stop due to his earnings. Clarence opens an ABLE account to save some of his earnings. He still has about $30 in his regular bank account. Clarence is eligible for Medicaid in the 1619B category with no spend down or premium, as Social Security Administration placed him in 1619B status based on his SSI payments stopping due to his earnings. His countable unearned income for SSI is below the $771 per month limit, as he's earning $0 from SSI. Countable resources for SSI are below $2,000, $30 because any resources placed in the ABLE account do not count. Earnings are below the 1619B threshold. He needs Medicaid for his psychiatrist, therapist, and medication, and he is not medically improved. Clarence continues his full-time job for 2 years and is then hospitalized briefly and stops working for 8 months. He has earned 8 Social Security work credits and is 24 years old. Because he has stopped working and is no longer performing SGA, Social Security evaluates his eligibility for SSDI after he gets out of the hospital. They determine he is eligible for $1,535 per month SSDI, and he begins to receive this amount. He is in the 2-year waiting period for Medicare. Medicaid paid for Clarence's hospitalization. His current medical expenses total $510 per month. Clarence's Medicaid will change to Mo HealthNet for the aged, blind, and disabled spend down, as SSA will end his 1619B status as his countable unearned income is over $771 per month and he is not working. His countable income is too high for non-spend down. He will have to meet a spend down of $630 per month before his coverage will begin for the month. Since his medical expenses are usually only $510 per month, he will not have coverage most months. After leaving the hospital, Clarence feels well enough to work part-time in an undemanding job. His supported employment provider helps him find a job working 28 hours per week, earning $10 per hour. He still receives $1,535 per month SSDI, and his situation is otherwise the same. Clarence is eligible for Ticket to Work health insurance As he meets Social Security definition of disability, he receives SSDI, meets gross income and net income limits, and his available resources remain under $4,000. He will have a $156 per month ticket to work health insurance premium, which is less than the amount his spend down amount would have increased to if he chose it rather than ticket to work health insurance. Our next case study is Martina. Martina is 47 years old and lives in a residential care facility, an RCF, through a Department of Mental Health supported community living contracted placement. She is not married. She receives $1,100 per month in SSDI. She has Medicare, and she has $3,100 in her bank account with no other assets. The base rate for her RCF is $1,500. Martina is eligible for supplemental nursing care, as she lives in a residential care facility, is at least age 21, meets the disability requirements. She receives SSDI. Her countable income is less than the RCF's base rate, and her available resources are under $4,000. Martina will receive the maximum SNC cash grant of $156 per month. The SCL program will pay the remaining $244 of the base rate plus a $50 per month personal needs allowance payment. She will receive non-spend down Medicaid, and Medicaid will pay her Medicare Part B premium. Martina begins working. She gets a job in a supported employment program. She works 20 hours per week at $8.50 per hour. She still receives $1,100 per month in SSDI, and her situation is otherwise the same. Martina is still eligible for SNC, as her countable income is now $1,425 per month, which is less than the basic residential care facility base rate of $1,500 per month. Her SNC cash grant will be reduced to $75 per month. The SCL program will require her to pay $254 from wages towards the base rate. SCL will pay the remaining $71 of the base rate. Martina also pays her $1,100 SSDI and $175 SNC to the facility, plus a $50 per month personal needs allowance payment. She will receive non-spend on Medicaid, and Medicaid will pay her Medicare Part B premium. After 6 months, Martina leaves the supported employment program job and begins working 25 hours per week at $9 per hour. She still receives $1,100 per month SSDI, and her situation is otherwise the same. Martina is no longer eligible for SNC, as her countable income of $2,175 exceeds the base rate of $1,500. She will remain in the SCL program, which will require her to pay $1,450 towards the base rate, and SCL will pay the remaining $50 plus a $50 per month personal needs allowance payment. Her Medicaid will change from non-spend down to ticket to work with a $62 per month premium. She will have to pay the Medicare Part B premium of $135.50, as she no longer receives SNC and her countable income is above the QMB and SLMB income limits. After working another 6 months, Martina receives a promotion at work and begins working 40 hours per week at $10 per hour. After 2 months, her SSDI ends, as she's used all of her trial work period months. Her Medicare coverage continues. She moves from the RCF into an apartment paying rent of $600 per month, plus utilities of $250 per month. She now also pays approximately $200 per month for food. Martina is no longer in the SCL program. She remains eligible for Medicaid in the Ticket to Work health insurance category with a $62 per month premium. She is now eligible for QMB, which will pay her Medicare Part B premium of $135.50. Our next case study is of Theodore. Theodore is 28 years old and blind. His vision is less than 5/200 in both eyes. He receives $820 per month from SSDI and Medicare. He has no other income. He has a bank account with $1,900 and no other assets. He lives in the community, is not married, and his sighted parents are not able to support him financially. He does not solicit alms. He needs services from Department of Mental Health, Medicaid HCB, community waiver, support waiver. Theodore is eligible for Supplemental Aid to the Blind, SAB, as he meets state's definition blindness, the state of Missouri, is 18 or older, has countable income under $833 per month, has countable resources of under $4,000 per month, has no sighted spouse or parents who can financially support him. He will receive an SAB cash grant of $750 and non-spend down Medicaid. Medicaid will cover his HCB waiver services. Theodore begins a part-time job. He works 20 hours per week and earns $15 per hour. The earnings are below the blind supplemental gain activity level, so his SSDI will continue. His situation is otherwise the same. Theodore is changed to blind pension as he's no longer eligible for supplemental aid to the blind as his countable income is over $833 per month. He will receive a blind pension cash grant of $750 and state-only funded Mo HealthNet without a spend-down or premium. He now pays the Medicare Part B premium of $135.50 per month as he is not receiving SAB and his countable income is above the QMB and SLMB limits. His state-only funded Mo HealthNet will not cover his HCB community support waiver services. His Department of Mental Health case manager determines he still needs community support waiver services and emails dmh.medicaid-eligibility@dmh.mo.gov to request Family Support Division determine if he is eligible in a Medicaid category that will cover waiver services while receiving the blind pension grant. Theodore is determined eligible for Ticket to Work health assurance as he is age 16 to 64. He meets the disability definition. He gets SSDI. He is employed, and he is paying Social Security and Medicare taxes. Gross income of under $3,123 per month. Net income under $885 limit. Countable resources of under $4,000. He will have $104 per month Ticket to Work premium and continue to receive the blind pension grant of $750. And that wraps up our case studies. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at dmh.medicaid-eligibility@dmh.mo.gov. Thank you so much for listening.